The views expressed on the following program do not necessarily reflect the views of Money Radio staff, management, or advertisers, and do not represent an offer to buy or sell any securities. Some interviews heard on this program may be sponsored by the participants.
It's time for the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth, financial literacy educator and speaker, entrepreneur, and chairman of the board of A Bank Information. Take charge of your financial future with your personal bank. Now here's Ference Toth.
What can I say? What a year. What else is 2020 going to throw at us? I mean, we've had a year of amazing changes. You know, of course, it kind of started with COVID, obviously. We saw markets initially drop historically quickly. We saw them recover historically quickly. We've had, it's just been a crazy year. We've had everything that you can think of. And again, a lot of it revolved around the COVID. Then we had the shutdowns, of course, the economic situation where we had, prior to that, historical good economic numbers, historical low unemployment, all that kind of stuff, to historical drops. Again, the speed of what has happened this year has been breathtaking. We had the third quarter numbers came out. We had one of the worst quarters in history certainly in terms of how quickly it happened. Second quarter, and then an all-time historic recovery because of the comeback and all this kind of stuff. It's been a breathtaking ride. It's been a breathtaking, wild roller coaster, frankly. Of course, we had a very contentious election that we just finished up this past week, and extremely close. And we're getting echoes of 2020 now, where we've got all types of situations going on in terms of the lawsuits that are flying around, the accusations of the votes being tampered with and fraud and all these kinds of things going on. You know, the last time this happened, it took over a month to get that resolved. It went all the way to the Supreme Court with Bush v. Gore. The more and more I look at this, and I'm sure like most of you probably this past week, I've really been watching a lot of stuff regarding the election, trying to make heads or tails of some of it. It's not always easy to do. There's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of partisanship going on both sides. Trying to kind of cut through the noise, which is something it's kind of been a common theme throughout the year. When I first started talking about being concerned about what could happen to the markets in our economy when COVID first hit, I got a lot of backlash initially. And then, of course, within weeks, the things that I was saying not only turned out to be accurate. Unfortunately, I was underestimating some of those things, certainly the speed of it. It's just been, what else, what else could 2020 throw at us? You know what I'm saying? It's just been crazy. And so really thinking about this, a few quick thoughts that I've had, and then, of course, how this affects our money. What do we do? How do we navigate these waters? I heard a advertisement just right before the show started on. I was listening, getting ready, and I thought, that's election protection. I thought that was a great little phrase. Obviously, your personal bank can be a tool in that, in having a place where there's some safety, some guarantees with your money. And I think there's going to be some historic opportunities also at the same time. I guess the one thought I have, and like I said, kind of relates to our money and economy and how things are going to go. And that's what the slant I'm going to try to do. And again, my goal here isn't to be partisan one side or the other. Frankly, I'm pretty much an independent. I've shared this before. There's things that I see on both sides of the aisle that I agree with and frankly disagree with. But in general, I'll just tell you straight up, full disclosure, I'm pretty much one who I would say if you had to put a label on what my personal opinions are, it's probably more libertarian than anything in terms of I think I would rather the individual make their choices of their life and have more control over their life than someone else or entity like government, for example. So again, that puts me at odds in agreement and odds with both sides, both parties, frankly, at times. But anyway, it's amazing when you look back. And I know there's some people that disparage the founding fathers and the Constitution and the system that was put in place. But the amazing part of that, even though we're in a maybe one of the closest elections in history, and very contentious, certainly. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. Very divided country, politically speaking. But our system of checks and balances is working. And I know the folks that kind of disparage that, and it's a 200-plus-year-old document, and things from that age don't apply now. I would beg to differ, and here's why I say that. See, when the Founding Fathers put the Constitution together and our system of government, they were not only looking at what they wanted to accomplish, but they were looking at historically of all the different forms of government that had existed for thousands of years prior. So they were looking at the history of what all these different types of government, the strengths and weaknesses of each that they had, and what they found, naturally speaking, and that's true today, is a government tends to try to get more power consistently over time. And, of course, when a government has more power, the people, generally speaking, have less. So what they wanted to do is, of course, create a system that had a lot of checks and balances to mitigate or minimize the power of the federal government. And that's where a big point of contention that is happening right now in terms of either side of the party, folks at either side of the aisle, political aisle, I should say, whether they're really wanting more government involvement in their life or less. Well, like I said, this system of checks and balances is actually working out pretty well. Of course, we're going to see what happens. There's a lot of legal challenges going on, and we're going to find out what the evidence is in court. It's going to be public record. One thing I would say about this is I'm fairly disappointed, because this should be important for everybody, irregardless of what side of the aisle you're on. The integrity of the election, transparency, accountability, those things are supremely important. And everyone should be calling for, hey, let's get this right. And the problems that I see, yes, there's been a lot of accusations that's been thrown around. Obviously, some are founded, some are unfounded. There's people there's some out there that are saying, hey, move on. There's nothing going on. Well, it's too early to tell. They don't know if there's things been going on, frankly. And the legal process needs to play itself out, which will give whoever wins more legitimacy. I mean, I don't think anyone would want to win with a cloud of suspicion about what was going on. And what I mean by that is there's a couple of very clear, obvious things that have happened. And one of those, of course, is, the observers in Philadelphia is a great example of not being able to be close enough to see the ballots, which is state and federal. These are laws that are on the books. A judge agreed with them, required them to be closer, but there was a period of time that they weren't. And then even more bothersome, though, to me, and you could argue, I've heard arguments both sides on that, but the one that really, to me, is bothersome is why did the Democratic Party then file an appeal to basically keep the observers out? Now, I'm not saying they're doing anything wrong, but we all know where there's smoke, there's fire. And transparency should be one of the goals everyone has in every election. And certainly that flies in the face of transparency and accountability. That way we have confidence in our elections. Both sides just say, look, whatever happened, happened. Let's make it as transparent as possible. That's my hope of all this. The end result is in the future, we can have confidence and not this infighting back and forth about who should be watching or who shouldn't. And the bottom line is it should be in a fishbowl. It should be open. It should be transparent. It should be videoed. People should be allowed to view. That's the law, and that's important for our democracy. Let's face it. So that's one of the biggest things that I find bothersome about this is there's such a fight there when there shouldn't be. So like I said, we're going to talk about this further in the next segments in terms of how the election and some of the things are going to go forward and how this is going to affect your money, the economy, and how do we navigate these choppy waters going forward. So stay tuned.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com.
How do you create certainty with your money in uncertain times? Hi, I'm Ference, host of the Your Personal Bank Show. In this low interest rate environment, most financial tools are generating extremely low returns. There still are options, including Your Personal Bank, that offer a solid, consistent rate of return regardless of what the markets do. Let's have a conversation. Contact me at yourpersonalbank.com or tune in to the Your Personal Bank Show Tuesdays at noon on Money Radio 1510 AM or 105.3 FM.
Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back to the Your Personal Bank Show. We've been talking already about the election and some of the choppy waters that we're dealing with that, frankly, has been a constant theme almost throughout 2020. I mean, I don't want to jinx us and say what else could happen, because right now, I'll be frank with you, nothing surprises me about this year, and the sooner we can put this in our rearview mirror, I think the better for a lot of people. Certainly, there's been historic opportunities. There's been historic challenges. How do we navigate these choppy waters? And like I said, just a few thoughts in terms of the election and what's going to happen. The thing is, our system is working. The system of checks and balances. I know there's some folks that want to be, and these are your more partisan folks on either side of the aisle, that want control of everything. House, the Senate, the presidency. And one of the things, here's the facts. I don't think anyone can disagree with this. This is a very close election. This is a very, in many places, razor thin, knife's edge. Those are many of the terms I've heard many times. We have states where literally the vote total for presidency is, a few, 10 or 20,000 out of millions of votes. I mean, the percentages are tiny. And the fact is, if it does end up like it appears it will, I mean, let's face it, from looking at outside, I have no insight to any of this of what's going to really happen. The vote totals seem to be in favor of Biden, obviously. Trump and his team are fighting it, and there's a number of court cases. The thing is, though, from a legal standpoint, and I have some good friends that are lawyers, I've been watching this, and you've seen the same thing, it's an extraordinarily high bar, unfortunately, to prove fraud and things like that. And it has to be material enough that would make a difference for things like the votes to be thrown out and stuff. And I think one of the best things I heard is it's the effect. We're dealing with like 4 states, I guess, this could be in play. Unlike in 2020, it was just one state, Florida, and the vote was literally like less than 1,000 difference. Okay, it was really super tight. That's in 2000, I should say. The thing is here, it's like the equivalent of throwing 4 Hail Marys. So not that it can't be done, but it's going to be extraordinarily a high bar. We'll put it that way. Now, I disagree with a bit of that, because what I find frustrating is, if election laws were broken, and that's remains to be seen, that'll come out in court. But if indeed that was the case, whether it meets the standard of changing the election or not, personally, I think the wrongdoers should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Because if you broke a law, you broke a law, right? Irregardless of if it changes the end result or not, that doesn't matter. You broke the law. And if courts are hesitant to prosecute that just encourages wrongdoers to, the risk of something bad happening to them goes down substantially. What have they got to lose? Either their guy gets in, or what they're doing doesn't make enough of a difference. So I'm not saying that's actually happening, but there certainly is evidence of that, and it's happened in previous elections. So I don't think anyone can deny that. Really what it does is incumbent on places like Philadelphia that has a documented history of folks who have tampered with elections. I mean, it's not even that long ago. A judge was found guilty a couple of years ago, I believe, in Philadelphia of stuffing ballot boxes and things like that. Those kinds of places really need to be held to a higher standard. Transparency, accountability. They should want to say, look, there's nothing going on here, see? Because we all know where there's smoke, there's fire. The problem is by challenging observers and even challenging it in court, that's undeniable, that begs people who are already suspicious, and there's already a history there, of what is really going on. It just makes the situation worse. And the thing is, some of the things I'm hearing from both sides of the aisle, which I like, is this is bigger than any particular candidate. This is about the integrity of our election system and our system of government. We're in I guess you could say, a constitutional crisis right now. Is our form of government going to continue the way it is, or is it going to be skewed by nefarious characters? Okay? That's what I find disconcerting. And I find it really disconcerting because, if some of you listen to the show, previous times I've talked about some of my family history. I'm first generation. I was born here, but I'm half Hungarian. That's where Ferenc comes from. It's a very common Hungarian name. And my dad escaped in 1956 from the Soviets. He was one of the, he got out something like a day before the borders closed. It was not a good situation, and he escaped, ended up in America eventually as a legal immigrant, got his citizenship, started a family here and all that good stuff, which is a great story. But the thing is, I have family, I have people I know who lived in countries like that became communist, socialist, whatever you want to call it, where the government was dominating people's lives, and folks didn't like it, and they wanted to get away from it. So I have a strong aversion to government, and I think you understand why I have a libertarian bent, just from family history, if you know what I'm saying. So I find it problematic when you have situations, and these are the kinds of situations that are played historically with these other government systems. So you can understand why I have an eye of caution and concern there, as all of us should. Again, our elections should be transparent. They should be high accountability. And I heard someone say this, and I think this is so true. We have more documentation when we ship a package than we do for mail-in voting, for example. And I'm sorry, but that's just wrong. If we can track a package and you can go online and you can track it and know where a package is at any given time, certainly we should be able to institute the same type of system or something similar for our voting system. Again, this isn't about who wins or loses. Unfortunately, the partisanship and the emotions get into play where one side will turn a blind eye because at that time, at least, it feels like it's helping their candidate. But it shouldn't be that way. It should be straight up, transparent, accountable, and whoever wins, wins, and whoever loses, loses. Plain and simple. That's what our country is founded upon. It's so important. Let me get to, that's kind of my rant, I guess you might want to say, my frustration. But what I want to talk about it now is a little bit more about what do we do going forward? How do we plan? What's the economy going to do? How do we protect our money? How do we grow our money going forward? Things like that. And of course, Your Personal Bank, like this show, talks about all the time. It's a great source, a good repository for safe money, a place to park your money safely, have some guarantees, and have access, liquidity, tax benefits, and all that. If you want more information, go to any of the previous shows, yourpersonalbank.com, or contact us at yourpersonalbank.com. I'll be happy to talk to you about it. But I do see historic opportunities and challenges ahead. And so, again, having your funds in a place like Your Personal Bank could give you a great place to park them, getting ready for those opportunities. Let's say we have another situation like we did in March where you could then buy, or we have the opposite, where you can sell and then park the monies here and have a nice return on them in the meantime, if you know what I'm saying. But probably one of the biggest things is, depending on who ends up control, it looks like the Democrats are going to, obviously most everybody agrees they're going to keep the House. It probably, this presidency, the Democrats will have. It's not 100% sure, but let's see. I think it might be a month before we know, okay? Looking at 2020, we'll see. The Senate, that's much more up for grabs. Most people kind of think that's leaning towards Republican. We're going to have these two Senate runoff races in Georgia in January, so we're not going to know for sure about who controls the Senate until after January 5th. That's just a fact. And so that creates a level of uncertainty between now and then in terms of what's going to happen. And I've stated about this election, and one of the good things about this election, we had historic turnout across the board. And we had that, I believe the number one reason, frankly, was a high percentage of Americans understood how important this election was. And they understood that there's a vast difference, probably one of the biggest differences, certainly in my lifetime, in terms of what the two parties stood for, what direction they wanted this country to go in. So depending on which side of the political aisle you leaned, okay, you understood how important this was. So one of the good things about this is we had one of the highest participation rates in history for an election. So more people got involved, and that's a good thing, okay? That's a great thing, actually. More people should be involved in the political process. I've always said, look, if you have some views about something and you fail to vote, well, and you don't like the result, well, that's on you, man. You know what I'm saying? You deserve to get what you get because you didn't make your voice heard. So that's a very good thing. The other thing is, again, like I said in the first segment, the system of checks and balances seems to be working. In other words, if it does end up what looks like to be the most likely situation at this point, that obviously can change dramatically, but the Democrats have the House, the Republicans have the Senate, and the Democrats have the presidency, we have a split government. And split government is actually what our founding fathers wanted most of the time, because they understood if you have two separate parties, then very little gets done, which is what their goal was. In other words, the attitude of the founding fathers pretty much was, understand, they came out from under a monarchy, an absolute monarchy, where in essence a dictatorship. One person made decisions that could affect people's lives. And that's their opinion. That was far too much power in the hands of one person, or in their view, even one party. So unless there's something that's like the COVID response, where we had the CARES Act, where we had the first stimulus package, that was overwhelmingly agreed by both sides of the aisle. That was important. And it got passed rather quickly and bipartisan. And that's when the government works best, when the vast majority of people agree that something needs to be done. We're going to talk about further. I know I'm getting off tangents here, but I think these are important topics in understanding and thinking about what's coming forward, what's next, and how do I respond to that with my money. So stay tuned. Don't miss in the next segment. We're going to jump into that pretty significantly.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
Welcome back. We've been talking a lot about the election, your money. How are things going to go forward? How do we navigate these waters? Certainly choppy, it looks like. Give you an idea, and then we've been talking about in the first segments here about how the system is working, this system of checks and balances. I mean, first of all, first initial short term, once the markets realized that Biden was probably going to win, and it looked like the House was going to stay in the Democratic hand, but the Senate stay in the Republican hands. Those were positive. That was a positive thing for the markets. They jumped up. Because the markets understand that the less the government does in general, typically that's a good thing. They don't get involved and get in our way, if you will, of live our lives, do our thing, and make a better life for our family, which is ultimately really what everybody wants, right? So that was an initial quick burst. Of course, we've got some other good news. It sounds like a vaccine might be very close to being approved. There's when you talk about the politics of it, when it was announced a week after the election, it's caused some scrutiny in terms of why it was announced then. Was there political motivation in that? Hard to say. But the reality is the initial short term was positive because if the government, again, is divided, very little is going to happen. And frankly, that's for the markets, for the economy, for our money, that's typically a good thing. Again, less government involvement, the better in general, in most cases. The other big thing, though, I think is a real big question mark is one of the biggest, would be student loans. What's going to happen with student loans is, as anybody's been paying attention, they've been in a situation basically in limbo. You haven't had to make payments. Interest isn't not being accrued. That's been extended through December 31st. There's been a lot of talk on the Democratic side, particularly of some forgiveness of student loans, what that would look like. But again, with a split House and Senate, would anything actually happen? It's really impossible to tell what is going to happen. From a planning standpoint, it makes it very difficult to plan forward if you don't really know what the rules are going to be. From a purely planning standpoint, being conservative, it makes sense to be prepared to make the payments again starting in January. But, of course, that could all change. I could see situations where folks who lost their jobs due to COVID or whatever have been unable to get those back or get a job back, we'll put it that way, and are struggling income-wise. Are they going to be able to make those student loan payments? And if they can't, what's going to happen there? What kind of forbearance situations or whatever are going to be in play there? Don't know. And unfortunately, that's the sad part of this, is when these things get drug out, like we're seeing now, the planning, what we're going to do. Again, the Senate's not going to be decided until January because of the runoff elections in Georgia. There's no way to know who's actually going to be in charge. And because the direction of each party is so different this go around, for the most part, of what they want to do, control of the Senate is going to become a huge factor, obviously, all-encompassing almost. But again, like I alluded to before, there may very well be some very wild swings quickly that may occur due to whatever ends up happening. And that could create some really historic opportunities, both for buying and selling, frankly. And one of the things I've always shared with folks in terms of the personal bank is it's a great depository for your funds. See, so many people, like when they move to cash, you hear that term all the time. I'm moving to cash, or I'm have money on the sidelines. They'll either have it like in a money market type of account or some type of checking savings account at a bank or whatever. And the problem with that today particularly is, what kind of interest rate are they earning? It's a joke right now. It's 0 point something typically. And my point is simple, is why not consider your personal bank as a depository for your funds to set aside when you want to go to cash, or you want to wait for that opportunity when it does come about. You know, as I stated in so many previous shows, we have companies that are paying 6% dividends. So if you're going to park your money for a little while, why not put it somewhere where it can actually earn? And secondly, we're looking at, depending on how we fund it, we're looking anywhere from 50 to 85% liquidity day one. So you got lots of liquidity on the funds. You got access to the majority of them. And then thirdly, there's tax benefits. Again, if you can grow your money tax-free versus tax-deferred or taxable, that's preferable, obviously. But lastly, and here's frankly probably the best part of it, by bringing in the bank line of credit and getting the positive arbitrage. In other words, if you're earning more than you're getting charged, you keep the difference. And based on current rates, our folks are getting 2 to 3% positive arbitrage. In other words, earning 6 on their monies in the policy, and they're getting charged in the low to high 3s, depending on the amount of money and such. So they're getting that 2 to 3% positive arbitrage, even when the monies are spent or allocated or used elsewhere. So why not consider this as a depository where you could put the money there, wait for the next opportunity that very likely may come along here in the near future, depending on what ends up happening. I could see significant swings in the market and the economy, going both ways, frankly, depending on the end results of these elections and such. Notice, I wouldn't want to be betting on them, if you know what I'm trying to say. That seems highly risky in my opinion. But anyway, the thing is, you be prepared and ready and in position to take advantage of those opportunities when they present themselves. It just makes so much sense. And the other side of it, so that's one side that makes a lot of sense. Let me give you another example. And I've run into this several times recently, in particular, because of the low interest rate environment. So many people understand, and this is true, you should have some emergency funds set aside in case of emergency. Now, one of my statements all the time, and by the way, oftentimes I see people, they put away some money, they got 6 months or years of reserves set aside, which is smart, good, solid financial planning. But sometimes that ends up running into more. Okay, I've seen that often too. It just keeps going because they just don't know where to put the money. Okay, I see that often. And, the interest rate, again, on those types of accounts is typically 0 point something. And so one of the things I say to folks like that is all the time is, look, emergency funds, bottom line is they need to be safe and liquid, right? Nobody said they had to be in the bank. Most people just kind of assume that's just where they put it. They put it in a savings or money market account or something like that. But the reality is it just needs to be safe and liquid. Well, again, the personal bank, you got 85%. If we dump a lump sum in and set it up correctly, we can get 85% liquidity day one. Okay? Well, that's pretty liquid. And there's guarantees. There's all types of guarantees in place. So the money's safe, basically. So, but you're earning 6% dividends rather than 0.0 something. Doesn't it just make sense to put that money to work and allow it to at least earn something for you while it's sitting there just in case for an emergency? I mean, it just makes logical sense. You see what I'm saying? I had one gal I talked to just recently who had built up a significant amount of funds in quote-unquote high-interest savings accounts, but when we looked at them all recently, all of them were earning less than 1%. Some of them, and there's a fair amount of funds here, earning 0.3%, a third of a point. And my point to her was simple. If you put it in the personal bank and earn 6, you access it and you're getting charged in the 3s, you're picking up 2 to 3% positive arbitrage. You're keeping the difference, right? Even after you spend the dollars. So if they're there, sitting there, you're earning 6% dividends. That's a heck of a lot better than less than 1. And even if you then later spent those dollars, you're still earning more than you are sitting in the bank, basically doing next to nothing. One of our terms we use for those kind of dollars are dead dollars. Why allow your dollars to just sit there dead, not doing anything, basically? Get them to go back to work for you so you can make more going forward and have access and the safety just in case you need it. Stay tuned to the next segment. We'll talk about this a little bit further. And as always, stay tuned to Your Personal Bank Show, or contact us at yourpersonalbank.com.
For more information on Your Personal Bank, feel free to contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com.
How do you create certainty with your money in uncertain times? Hi, I'm Ference, host of the Your Personal Bank Show. In this low interest rate environment, most financial tools are generating extremely low returns. There still are options, including Your Personal Bank, that offer a solid, consistent rate of return regardless of what the markets do. Let's have a conversation. Contact me at yourpersonalbank.com or tune in to the Your Personal Bank Show Tuesdays at noon on Money Radio 1510 AM or 105.3 FM.
Back to the Your Personal Bank Show with Ference Toth.
All right, we're rounding third here, and we're just kind of touching on the election, the results, what's going to happen, how do we navigate this? What appears to be choppy waters. There's certainly a lot of uncertainty in terms of what's going to happen going forward. We think we know what will probably happen, but it's not going to be definite. Probably, well, we're getting echoes of 2020, right? And it could be a month. I mean, there's a lot of legal challenges and things like that going on right now. Could be some time before we know for certain who's going to be the president. We definitely won't know until after the two Senate races runoffs in January in terms of who will be controlling the Senate. It appears the Republicans have the upper hand, but we won't know for sure. The House seems to be held by the Democrats, so we could easily end up with a split government situation, or we could end up with a situation where all three, the House, the Senate, and the presidency, are all in the hands of one party. Obviously, the difference of those two directions, those two options, are significant because of the differences of what the parties really want to accomplish right now. We had a historic turnout election because most people understood the significance of this election and the differences that the two sides were really wanting. And it's going to make a difference. And the thing I guess I want to share is our system is working. Our system of checks and balances, the legal system to take care of challenges and whatnot is working. I wish and I'm hope that going forward that we won't have so much of this legal challenge and such because if our election people, the folks that are in charge of our election system, would really adhere to a transparent and highly accountable system, it would really minimize this angst that many people feel right now and frustration, not knowing what really went on. Because when you close, behind closed doors, where there's smoke, there's fire. It's very disconcerting. And so the end result of all this long term, the good news is, hey, I think our system is going to survive. I'm much more encouraged after the election, frankly, than I was before, because it was very close. And if it does end up being the House is in one party, Senate is in the other, that's actually pretty much, frankly, where it should be. Because we are a very divided country. It is very evenly split. It's it's very close to 50-50. This is a historically close election, and that's the facts. So the fact that, one party holds one house, the other party holds the other, the Senate, actually is fitting. It's accurate and correct. One of my frustrations, and I've been hearing this by some, I hate it when politicians, after winning an election, particularly a close one, start claiming some type of mandate. There's no mandate here. It was far too close for there to be anyone to call any kind of mandate. We're divided, and we have a different view of what what type of country going forward, what kind of government, what our government should and shouldn't be doing going forward. The battle will not end when this election cycle is finalized and over. That's going to continue, and it'll remain interesting to see going forward the next 2 and 4 years and so on. Where are we headed? Which side is going to win the battle, or are we going to be fighting this seesaw back and forth like we are now and have been for some time? And, of course, emotions get high when that happens, especially when it gets so close like it did. But, again, I really fervently hope that one of the lessons that's taken from this election is that transparency in the process is key. Accountability and integrity of the process is key because, well, there's no secret that many Democrats 4 years ago did not accept President Trump as the president. We heard that over and over. He's not my president. They didn't, we don't need that kind of challenges and problems. And if going forward Biden ends up becoming the president and these challenges, these situations are not resolved and people have questions in their mind, look, where there's smoke, there's fire. We're not sure if anything happened, but what is the logical reason for kicking out poll watchers? I mean, there is no logical reason unless you consider nefarious actions. And that's the frustrating part about it. And if nothing was going on, why would they care if they're there? In fact, they should be welcomed and encouraged to be there to ensure, again, the integrity of the process. So that's the frustrating part. I hope that goes forward. Again, there can be some wild swings going forward. I'm going to encourage you to stay tuned. We're going to stay on top of this best we can. And I would just say, like I've always said for the past 22 plus years of my career, having a portion of your money where it's guaranteed, it has safety, you have access to the money, you have tax benefits, you can take advantage of opportunities when they present themselves, you can cover emergencies when they occur. Folks, if 2020 hasn't taught you the lessons, the importance of having money set aside for when you need it, I don't know what will. So being overcommitted to, overcommitted to risk, having all your money in the market, for example, for most people that I deal with, probably not a wise strategy, okay? The reality is, and I've said it a million times, modern portfolio theory talks about a 60-40 split as a good rule of thumb. That can vary based on your age and risk tolerance. I get that. Let's talk. Contact me at yourpersonalbank.com. Let's see what makes sense for you. Let's look at an option that, frankly, most of the time when I talk to folks, this is not something they've ever considered or looked at. But when they hear about it and I share them, 6% dividends, 25-year plus history of paying those, never miss a dividend since before the Civil War. That's strong stuff, folks. Really strong stuff. It's the consistency, it's the steadiness, the steady eddy, at least of a portion of your bucket. It's a great diversification tool. It's a great tax planning tool. It's a great liquidity tool. And like I said, the biggest thing, I'm not negative about the future of where things are going. I'm actually quite positive. I even said I'm more encouraged after the election than before. I've been reaffirmed the faith in the American public that, look, there's a good chunk of us out there that don't want to just, our country is not clamoring for major change. How's that? The majority aren't. There are a certain percentage out there that are, no question. But for looking at the election, what's happened, not just the presidential election, but down ticket, all the other things that happened, you look at who won, who lost, and there's arguments even internally with the Democratic Party that's become public here. The majority of this country is not looking for a major revolutionary change. We're pretty happy the way things are. It's not perfect. I get it. There's things that can be improved upon, no question. But our system of government and who we are as a country and the view of where most people are in this country, we're still a center-right country. We don't want major changes. We're not looking for a revolution. And I'm heartened by that. And I'm hopeful going forward that that's what ends up winning out. We'll see. We're going to have short-term ups and downs. There's going to be, like I said, tremendous change, potentially. There's going to be some choppy waters. There's going to be some significant historical opportunities that are going to present themselves, very likely. And the key is putting yourself in the position to be able to take advantage of those. There's no reason you have to ride the roller coaster with everything. It's not a bad idea to have some set aside for when the roller coaster takes that dip and now you have an opportunity to take advantage of it. And that's one of the main things that your personal bank can do. Create some stability, some consistency, and give you the position to take advantage of opportunities. That's what I'm doing and many of my clients. And it's working out great for us and has been for a long, long time. So as always, contact us at Your Personal Bank for more information. I'll be happy to talk to you about this. And, stay tuned. We're going to be on the air every Tuesday at noon and Thursday at 1 for the Your Personal Bank show. And we'll keep covering these things. Thank you for the responses. I've been getting emails from folks contacting me, asking questions, recommending topics to talk about, what they would like me to share. It's been a lot of fun, and I look forward to continuing to do so. So as always, stay tuned.
Listen Tuesday at noon and Thursdays at 1 for more information on Your Personal Bank. Contact Ference at yourpersonalbank.com. This show is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information. The presenter and guest on this program do not engage in legal, accounting, or tax advice. Professional advice regarding your situation should be sought if required. Products and riders may have limitations and may not be available in all states. Excessive unpaid loans may affect performance. Distributions may become taxable if not managed properly. Replacements may not be suitable for everyone. There may be charges when replacing coverage. Compare when considering a replacement. Dividend rates and baseline of credit rates may change. Contact yourpersonalbank.com for current rates.